Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're wrapping some posts, doing some finish work. So I'm gonna show you how we do that. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. All right, so on this project, we're getting close to the end of it. We're actually softening the underside of this deck and trimming everything out for a complete finished look. And this is not a complete finished look. It's just basically pressure treated hemlock post that is exposed to the elements. So we're gonna wrap it in a product called AZEK. Now AZEK has a product called Paint Pro, which is paintable trim. Instead of using their bright white stuff, we're using the Paint Pro and we're using the smooth side out on this particular install. So we're gonna build a 3-sided box, put it around this post, and then add the 4th side to it, put all the screws in it, then we'll put some plugs in it, Cortex it up, and then it's ready for paint. The reason we couldn't use a color matched product is because the products that we chose on this particular deck build do not come in a multi-width, a 7 1/4 inch board. If they did, I would have wrapped the posts in those and we would have been done. But because they don't have that availability yet, the homeowner decided they're just gonna paint these posts the same color as the house, and that's gonna look great. So we've already got some materials ripped down. Let's go over to the table and I'll show you how I assemble the 3 sides of the box. We don't do miters around here where I come from. Some of you might, but you'll see why I'm not using a miter on this particular install. There are other post wraps available, but this is what I've chosen to do on this particular job. So hopefully somebody gets something out of it. All right, so what we have here are our boards that we've already ripped to width. Now, when I'm doing a wrap around a post, I leave about a 1/2 inch of play on the inside of the post because the base of the post has a metal bracket on there, and you're gonna have a thickness variance from the bottom of the post to the top. So I leave the bottom alone, and then I'll shim the top of the post to make sure it's where I need to be. I'll show you guys that here in a little bit. Usually we would only sand one side because we're gonna overlap. We're gonna overlap these joints in sequence. So each side of the post has one exposed end grain and one that's hidden on the inside. So this product, Paint Pro, has one side that's called a frontier texture, and then the other side is a smooth texture. And this smooth texture is what the clients chose, and that's the one they're gonna paint. So if there's some like scuffs or stains or whatever on it, it can all be sanded out or fixed or whatever. So no worries. So anyways, what we did is we smoothed out the sides because the saw kerf, I only had a 50-tooth blade. I didn't have anything with more teeth. So we had to run our orbital sander along here to kind of smooth them out. So I'm gonna take a look at both sides of these and decide, okay, which side do I want out? This side looks pretty good. So I'm gonna have this side overlap this other one. So I'm gonna put this one like so. And then what I did was I just cut a couple scraps that I can use to kind of hold this board in place while I mark it out and get it ready for installation. So I just set it like this. So this side of this board that's been sanded and looks nice is gonna face out. So all I have to do now is kind of line this up. I'm gonna put a screw every 12 inches in this post. I'm gonna use a Cortex bit to do that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just come up to the top and make sure that these two pieces are flush, like so. And then make sure I'm happy with the distance. I'm gonna put my first screw about 1.5 inches down from the top. And that's the Cortex screw. Now there's matching smooth plugs that will go into each one of these holes and cover it up. All right, so here's the hole. And they just disappear. And then once you paint over them, you really don't see them. Okay, now that we know that, now we're gonna put a screw every 12 inches, about a 1/2 inch away. Now this is why I don't do miters. If you try to Cortex a corner on a miter this close, you're gonna push a screw right through the miter and right into the other side of the board. It won't hold. You're gonna have to try to glue them or do some other type of install. And I have just had so many issues with miters where I come from that I've decided lap joints or butt joints or overlap joints or whatever you wanna call them, for what I do and where I live, it's pretty common to do stuff like this around here. I've got almost all my screws in, and then I'm gonna put this one at the bottom about 1.5 inches up. Like that. Now what I'm gonna do is go through and install these screws, and I'm going to push in and out on this trim, or on these boards, so they're flush, or fairly flush. any super big inconsistencies, a high quality sealant, white silicone or something like that will work. Really nice to hide the line. Okay, so that's one side. So now I'm gonna turn my box over, and if I use these, they're gonna be too tall. So I have another set that I made that I ripped an inch out of them, and I can put these like this, and then I can install my next piece. So I'm gonna grab the next board and take a quick look at it. Okay, that side's rough, so that side's gonna go over there. Okay, there's on my nice smooth side. So that's the side I need out, okay? And then again, I just do the same thing with my layout. I'll go ahead and install my first screw just to make it tight before I start marking things out. It's nice and flush, looks good. And you can see these joints, how they're overlapping. Like this piece overlaps this piece, and then this piece overlaps this piece. And it allows me to get a good connection into the actual material on each end. So from there, I'll just do my layout again. And I'm kind of eyeballing it. I'm not marking all this out because if I'm off a 16th or an 8th or whatever, nobody's gonna know. And it's gonna be hidden because it's all Cortex anyways. It's gonna be close enough if you're walking up and you're looking at this post and you're walking around the post, all the screws are relatively in the same spot. Okay, now that I have all my screws ready to go, I'm just gonna flush out my edges and continue fastening the box. All right, so now I have 3 sides of my box made. Now we can take this over to the post and test fit it and see how it fits. And then we'll go from there as far as what we need to do for adjustments. And I'll show you a little bit about shimming. And then we'll start to install the 4th piece. And then we'll actually get this thing attached to the existing post and then finish up with our bracketry. And the last thing we'll do is add a base, a post base, which I haven't made yet, just a little bit of extra trim. So we'll get to that in a minute. All right, let's go back over and see how this fits. Okay, we have a little sand. Uh-oh. Huh, I thought we weren't gonna fit there for a second. There we go. Okay, so that slid on very nice. You can see, if you come over here, you can see the gap, the size of the gap that we have. A little bit of play going on here, right? Well, that's mostly because of this thing down here. That base of the helical pile, if I didn't make the inside of the post that big, I would have to try to shave the inside of the post down to get around all that. So instead of doing that, we just made this a little big. What I'll do is when we finish installing this, I'll put screws on 2 sides of the post. That'll force this trim against this post here, against this side of the post, and then I'll screw it from the outside into the post this way, so it'll be attached on 2 sides. So this side will be floating and this side will be floating. But we shouldn't have any issues with that in the future. If we wanted to, we could throw a few pieces of shim in here and trim it out a little bit more, but I don't think it's necessary. I've never had a problem with the trim moving with 2 sides fastened. So I gotta go get the last piece of the post trim and let's get that installed. Okay, so before I go any further, because this post sticks out further than the trim on the beam, I'm gonna put a piece of Z-metal or flashing up inside of here so that water won't come and sit on this and then go to the inside of the post and drain down the post over the years. Eventually that could become a decay issue. I might have to loosen a screw or 2. That piece of flashing will keep water from going up underneath and into this. And once it's all painted, it's never gonna be seen. So that's a cool thing to do, just to make sure that the path of the water doesn't infiltrate and damage the inside of your post. Now that that's done, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shim this all the way up to that flashing. This one's pretty tight. My other 2 were a little looser. But, okay, that will keep this at the height I want it. Now, before I go any further, I know I'm gonna push this all the way this way. So let's go on the inside. Let's shim the inside of the post. I'm gonna need 3 shims here. So I'm gonna take 2 in, like so, and then a 3rd one. I'm gonna split these 2 shims and put my 3rd one in like this. And I'm gonna check my measurement because I need about 7 inches, which is perfect. Okay, So what I'm gonna do, now that I know my post is to the right height I need, and I have these shims in here holding this side tight, I'm gonna put one screw in here to hold this thing together. So it'll hold those shims in place and keep this thing nice and tight. Now that that's done, I can break those off. And now I can put my fourth piece on this inside of the post to finish my box. So this one's gonna go like this and be attached like that. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start at the top, make sure it's at the proper height, put the first screw in, mark it out, and then install my screws. I'm a little high. I think what I'm gonna try and do, see if I can't possibly shim this corner up a little bit. Okay, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to screw this in. Okay, now I've got it to elevation. Now I just gotta do a quick layout on where I wanna put my fasteners. And now I will put a mark in the board every 12 inches. And then I'll go ahead and pre-start all these screws so that they're ready to go. That's one less thing I'm trying to fiddle around with while I'm trying to make this a perfect box. And again, I'm about a 1/2 inch away from the edge because this material is 5/4 by 8. So it's an inch thick, and I've ripped it down to 7 inches to get around the 5.5 inch post plus an inch thickness plus a 1/2 inch of play. Now that I have all the screws ready to go, you can see that this board is just sticking out too far. So all I have to do is push in on it or out to kind of get it flush. Once it's flush, we add a screw. If it's in too far, then I push on this board out to flush it out. And I just keep doing that until I have the right consistency I'm looking for. And if I have to, I can pull in on that. Okay, now that that side's done, we have to go around here and do our last attachment, line of attachments. So again, I'm just gonna go ahead and get the top one fastened. And again, you just keep pushing, pulling to get it to where you need it. That looks good. Okay, now I'm gonna finish, again, just marking out every 12 inches, and then I'll pre-install the screws. And then I'll go from the top and work my way down, just like the other sides. And then the post will be completely encased. And then we just have to finish installing the trim, the new box we just built. All right, so now we have our post wrapping our inside of our pressure treated post. We've got our little piece of flashing up here, but the post is still a little bit loose. So what I'm gonna do is add some fasteners. Now I'm not gonna put any fasteners low because I know there's danger down there. There's a bracket and there's air. There's a certain part, if we put a screw in the wrong spot, it's just gonna spin because we're not attaching to anything. So I'm gonna come up to my second screw, and that's where I'm gonna start putting in fasteners. So I just wanna make sure I lean and I push this thing all the way. So now I'm gonna take a screw right here, put it there, and then I'm gonna take another one on the outside and put one right here. So now I know that this post is pushed tight against two sides of the inside post, that my post wrap is pushed to the inside of these two sides, nice and flush, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up, and I'm gonna go up 2 feet from those two screws, and I'm gonna do another set of screws. And these will all get plugged. It doesn't really matter how many screws I put into this post. I still want it to be clean, but I just need enough to hold this in place for good. So that's why I'm doing one every 2 feet. Okay, so all the thing that's left to do now is Cortex these posts, and then let's go ahead and make our base trim pieces while we're getting these holes filled, and then I'll show you how those go on. So basically the distance around the post is around 8 inches. So I cut these 9 inches, again, because I'm gonna do the same overlapping butt joint like so, and then we're gonna make a 3-sided piece, and then we're gonna go over and install it on the post after we put our 4th piece on. So sometimes when I'm doing little details like this, I'll just grab a rasp and I'll file out some edges that I know will look better if they just have a little bit of detail on them. And this Paint Pro is pretty easy to file out. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. So So basically when I put these two pieces together, this will have an edge, this will have an edge, this will have an edge, and it'll look good. I'll put 2 screws in this and I'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again until we get done with all of these posts. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get one done to show you guys how it looks, okay? So we'll just go ahead and install this and come down about an inch or so, flush everything out. And the thing is, if you make them just a little bit bigger than you need, then you can add a little bit of, I use a product called Big Stretch, and Big Stretch works great for hiding gaps and things like that. And so we'll put some Big Stretch on here and it'll hide any gap that we have, like that's sitting between the post and this trim piece. Now, let's go ahead and just file everything off. Now all we got to do is go over and install this on the base of the post. All right, let's go over and check this out. Here we go. So here I'm sliding this piece over and you can see right here, there's going to be a little bit of a gap here, but a clean bead of white before you paint will definitely make that go away. I think I'm gonna raise this up a little bit too before I actually screw it to the post, just so they can get something thin under here when they're painting, just so it doesn't become such a hassle to paint, so they're not painting the pavers. Okay, so the 3 sides, that looks good. So I'm gonna come over and this will go like so. So I'll go ahead and drop a couple screws in here. And I'll be honest, you do wanna have a little bit of clearance, because I've actually tried to make these before where I was like struggling and using a clamp to try and get these tight. And that is a trick if this becomes an issue. Like right here, I could use a clamp, but I think we're okay. But I tell you what, boy, I might have given this an extra 16th on the next time, just because it is a pretty tight fit. So that looks really nice. So the last thing, after we get this last screw in here, again, the box is attached. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit for paint purposes. All right, so I got a little bit of a shim under here. Not a ton, I don't want it sitting really high, but I want it off the pavers a little bit, just so they can get something thin in there, even if it's a piece of paper, just so they can paint this and not paint the pavers. Okay, now that that's up, I'm just gonna put 1 center screw in each side of this base. Now, if you have a lot of drainage on your patio, you might have to, I've had to do this before, where you actually have to build these out of plumb or out of square or skew, whatever you want to call it, where you're putting a pitch on the actual trim, and that will look better than trying to make a square fit an angle. You can get away with a certain amount of it, but not a whole bunch. So, you know, plan accordingly. If you, let's say you drop an inch in 6 or 8 inches, then you're gonna have to trim the bottoms of these boxes out so that they're at an angle so it fits the ground properly. But now that we have this all screwed together, I'm just gonna add a screw somewhere in the middle. I had to think about this for a minute, because I know on the inside of this post, there's metal. And if I put this screw too high, I'm gonna hit the metal bracket that's on the inside of this post. On these 2 sides, I'm gonna have to put my screws low. I almost blew it. Or I'm gonna have to use a shorter screw. But I really don't have any shorter Cortex screws with me, so I just gotta make sure I do this in the right sequence. Last screw, there you go. So that's how we are trimming out these posts. Give it a nice look. Looks finished when you're all said and done for the day. If you like what you saw, don't forget to click that subscribe button, hit that bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.